Good morning. It's early, but good morning. Much better. I am Katie Short-Thompson. I'm the Dean of the University of Cincinnati Blue Ash College, and I'm really pleased that you have chosen to spend this very early Sunday morning with us. As we all know, the terrorist attacks of 10 years ago changed the face of our nation forever. For on September 11th, 2001, 19 hijackers crashed 4 planes in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Somerset County, Pennsylvania, resulting in the death of over 3,000 people. Of the deaths in the attacks were civilians, except for 55 military personnel killed in the Pentagon. Citizens from more than 90 countries, including 8 children, were killed in the attacks on the World Trade Center. Also killed in these attacks were 343 New York City Fire Department firefighters, 23 New York City Police Department officers, 37 Port Authority Police Department officers, 15 EMTs, and 3 court officers. Approximately 2,000 first responders were also injured in the attacks. Our purpose today is to honor the lives of those lost and to pray for the comfort of the survivors and their families. My hope is that we stand united as we resolve to never forget the events of 9/11 while remembering those who were lost on the most of all fateful days. It takes a strong and united community to overcome such a tragedy and to move forward. For example, the community of Blue Ash is a strong and resilient and committed to each other type of community. Please join me in welcoming the Mayor of Blue Ash, Mark Weber. Mark?
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the City of Blue Ash, welcome to this morning's 9/11 remembrance. In the past 75 years, 2 traumatic events have burned their way into the American psyche. The first was December 7th, 1941. The second, September 11th, 2001, changed our lives forever. As a nation, we expressed horror, shock, disbelief, anger, and finally resolve. Remember, if you will, the solidarity, the empathy, and the mutual respect we showed each other in the days and weeks that followed. Now, 10 years later, we seem hopelessly polarized. The political rhetoric is angry and uncompromising. This morning, we hearken back to those unforgettable days in September 10 years ago. We should all take a moment to conjure up the pride, determination, and spirit of cooperation that we felt then and apply it now. There is no better way to honor the memory of those we lost that day and those we have lost in the struggle since. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Weber. Our first remembrance this morning comes from Colonel Karen Giles, president of the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Sciences, as she will share with you her military service provided her with unique insight into the aftermath of the 9/11 events. Please welcome Colonel Giles.
Thank you. And good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank the University of Cincinnati at Blue Ash campus for hosting this event. I am in uniform today to honor those that have served and are still serving today. This day is about remembering and about sharing perspectives. My perspective is in the form of the Pentagon, where American Airlines Flight 77 was crashed into the building, murdering 59 passengers and crew, and 125 military and civilians in the building. 8 days later, then Lieutenant Colonel Giles went to perform tertiary search and recovery of the site. I walked through those holes made by the fuselage and the engines. The wreckage and debris of the building had to be sifted. Everything was gathered and removed from the building and then separated back out. From airplane parts to the classified films off the Pentagon windows to human remains. At this point, subsequent recoveries, soft tissue and bones, and for the sake of the children in the audience, just parts. Early on, there were daily evacuations to the port mortuary at Dover, where there the remains were examined and prepared for return to waiting families. Another part of that duty that I was called to was to become the deputy PE, or Personal Effects Depot Commander. Now, the Army Military District of Washington was in charge. There was a big, about 6'3" two-star that was in charge on the site. And sometimes I felt like a little piece of blue in a big green Army world. It was a massive operation, coordinated with the FBI on the return of the personal effects versus what was counted as evidence of the crime. I'll never forget walking into the FBI warehouse and seeing all the cars from Pentagon workers that would never see their drivers return. Tens of thousands of office and desk items, coins, files, pictures, and all of the passenger luggage and all of the personal effects recovered from that site, including small toys, a stuffed animal, jewelry, clothing. One day, all of the sharps were laid out on a table: scissors, nail files, nail clippers, and a couple box cutters, and tons of paper. The mission was to clean, inventory, photo, catalog, and return to their owners or the families of the deceased. About 120 days later, I went home, and like many of you, my life would never be the same. To commemorate this day, I remember these people, both the living and the dead, and what this day set in motion. 2 years later, I would witness, as the director of the port mortuary at Dover, our efforts and losses in 2 conflicts abroad. From 2003 to 2008, responsible for, as my chaplain and I used to say, the river of souls which passed through that facility. But as the decade closes, my duty now is to remember, to tell the stories and go on, appreciating life each day and honoring their sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Giles. We appreciate the valuable service that you have provided to our country. Please also welcome the representative of the 28th District of Ohio, Representative Connie Pillich, as she joins us to share her memories with us.
Thank you, Dean, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this day of remembrance and about the events of 9/11 and their aftermath and hopefully our future. It's a tall order to speak on a day such as this, to commemorate this pivotal event in our nation's history. How can anybody possibly convey the abominable violation to our nation's integrity? I was at the courthouse. I don't remember who I was defending that day, just before I exited the building and learned the news on the front steps. I just know I was part of a justice system, the system that's the envy of much of the world. I stood on the steps of the courthouse and tried to grapple with this unbelievable, unimaginable, and impossible event that the United States had been attacked. My military training took over pretty quickly, and I assessed the security of the situation there on those steps. And of course, everyone just was ashen-faced, those who had heard, and those who had not yet heard were just going to court to work or to find out what was going to happen to them. As soon as I felt secure, I did what every other parent did. I called the school. My children were safe. Montgomery Elementary wisely kept the kids at school that day and treated it as a normal day in the eyes of these children. And they allowed the parents to talk about this when the kids got home. I will always remember 9/11 as a horrific day, but I do believe that out of this disaster, the best in America has been brought forth. Our first responders, many of them here, charged into those twin towers, saved the lives of others, and many ultimately lost their own. And we saw our nurses and paramedics, police, social workers all stand up and work long shifts so that they could treat the wounded and comfort and counsel those who lost their loved ones. And then the construction workers, the tradesmen, and many others flocked to New York City to help clear the debris, sift through the dust, and find the remains. And especially our teachers at school, I felt really protected our children and talked about it in a very age-appropriate way. Many of my friends returned to active duty. Unable to tell me exactly where they were or what they were doing, I would just get snippets here and there about the sand, the dust, the heat, the dirt, and no shower facilities for weeks and weeks and weeks. So now it's 10 years later, and we're still at war, that war that was begun that morning. It's impossible for us to know when it'll be over, given the nature of this war and the elusiveness of our enemy. And the war is very far away in more ways than just one, obviously geographically, but mentally too. And this troubles me because we don't have this collective consciousness, this rationing, the victory gardens. We don't pay attention to the war on a daily basis. We don't know where the military is or what they're doing. We simply go about our daily lives as if nothing's going on. But on Friday, I was privileged to welcome back 276 National Guardsmen back from a year away in Iraq. And let me tell you, it was quite touching to see these military dads and military moms carrying around their toddlers that they hadn't seen in a year. That's sacrifice. I really do believe America is resilient. Out of this disaster, we as Americans always have done and always will do, we've rebuilt. We've created beautiful memorials in tribute to the innocent lives lost. The Pentagon has been repaired. The grass is green again on that field in Pennsylvania, and a shiny new building is rising near Ground Zero in New York City. All of this is a tribute to how America is the greatest and strongest nation in the world. We'll always come back. And I do believe that one of the lessons we learned from 9/11 is that we are never wholly safe and secure in this world. And I don't mean just our military, but I mean our safety forces, such as our police and fire and nurses and social workers. They continue to be on duty, and we continue to need them. And because of them, we really can enjoy the freedoms that we all hold dear. The freedom to assemble like this, the freedom to think, to protest and disagree. All those freedoms in our Bill of Rights. That makes us the envy of the world. Another lesson we learned is that public service in its many forms is essential to our American culture, and it's essential to our future. My service at that time was to the indigent, and then, of course, to my children and their schools and soccer community. But what's your service? What will it be tomorrow? And what of your neighbors and your children? What are they going to do to contribute? So I would ask you all to use this day not only to remember those horrific events, but to remember that we all need to step up and serve our country. And so determine what you can do to contribute to America. I think today is the day we should all take an assessment about how we can come together for the future of our country. And I like to remember our first national motto, I think it was our first national motto, was E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And that's what makes our country great. That's what those who fought and died stood for. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pillich. Now I ask that you rise for the presentation of our nation's colors by the Blue Ash Air National Guard Honor Guard. Then please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance by students from Blue Ash Elementary School, followed by the singing of our national anthem by Shayna Baylor of Sycamore High School.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets of regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
You may be seated. I want to mention really quickly as Shayna leaves today that she is off to take her ACT in 15 minutes. Can we give her an extra round of applause?
As we are gathered here today to remember those who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001, and to honor those whose heroism during the following events showed the world the true spirit of America, let us return to that day in our thoughts. At 8:46 a.m., the attacks began when American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. As events unfolded in the next hour, the nation would soon become aware that the unthinkable had happened. Please join me now in a moment of silence as we reflect on these events and we remember those whose lives were lost.
Please pray with me if you will. God, we come before you this morning so awed and honored and also reminded of the horrors that sometimes we face here on this earth. We thank you so much for the lives that we have memories of that have been sacrificed. We thank you so much for the opportunities that we have to serve. And God, as we continue to think about this day and think about what happened on September 11th, 2001, help us to ponder how we can be of service to each other, how we can make a dent in our community, how we can make a dent in the line at the grocery store, how we can make a dent with someone who's sitting beside us. Continue to move us through the power of your Spirit to think of those who lost their lives on that day, and for the over 6,000 members of our armed forces and their families who have also lost their lives since that day. And for the rest of us, we pray that you continue to just hold us up and help us do right, because it is. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Henderson. Chief Steve Ashbrook knows what it means to advance into the midst of danger to help others. He has served the Cincinnati community for many years doing just that. Please welcome Chief Ashbrook as he reflects on this 10th anniversary through the eyes of a committed first responder. Chief?
Thank you, Dean. Members of the faculty of the Blue Ash College, Raymond Walters College, of the University of Cincinnati, Congresswomen, members of the armed forces that are here, my colleagues in fire and law enforcement. Today's an important day for all of us. On that September morning, September 11th, 2001, it was a beautiful September morning, not unlike at least the way it was when I walked in here this morning. And it was like that way in Washington, D.C., and in New York City, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And I remember where I was. It was the new cliche that for me was now the more recent one that I remember where I was when President Kennedy was killed. Now it was, I remember where I was when I first learned of the events in New York City. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, ironically, I was driving to Columbus to the Ohio Emergency Management Agency for a meeting of the statewide rescue resource planners that was to happen there at 10 o'clock. I had made a cell phone call to a colleague at Anderson Township Fire Department, and during that 10-minute call, he was alerted by commotion in the background at his station, and the first news that a plane had hit one of the World Trade Center towers. And we talked about, oh, that had happened in a King Kong movie, and we'd also talked about that happening, actually a B-25 bomber at one time hit the Empire State Building. And we talked about what kind of Cessna this might have been. And during that conversation, he said, well, turn on the news, and I switched to talk radio at that point, and things became more and more ominous and the details concerning as I listened to the radio and completed my drive to the EMA. I watched news coverage from the Situation Room that's set up for disasters statewide in Columbus at the EMA, and we became aware that the aircraft that eventually was taken down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, had passed over Cleveland, and we were watching it in its threat for Ohio at the time. And then we watched unbelievingly as the towers sequentially collapsed into what today is known as Ground Zero. And like many of you, the first images of that on television were something happened, but we don't know what. And then it was, that building just fell. I get chills thinking about what unfolded that morning. The coming days were filled with emails, conversations, conference calls, detail and information management, as I assisted in a small way in the coordination of the response of Ohio Task Force 1, a federal urban search and rescue task force based at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, to the World Trade Center site. Because on that task force, there were 18 members of Hamilton County Fire Departments, 70 members in all of Southwest Ohio fire departments that were on the USAR team. They responded to the site where 343 firefighting brothers were lost in but a few minutes' time, the largest single line of duty death in history. They worked in New York for over 10 days, and each of these firefighters returned a different person. The attack on the United States, on our way of life, on our freedoms, on our citizens and the citizens of the world, made on September 11th, 2001, was a terroristic event brought home to the United States in what has become an unforgettable manner. 3,000 persons, plus or minus, perished at the terrorist hands in just a couple hours' time. The event is one that has changed us all and the fabric of our society in general. The vulnerabilities of a free and open society have been graphically exposed. I wasn't in New York or Washington, D.C., or in Shanksville, Pennsylvania on that day, and I didn't move forward to those areas as an emergency responder. I sometimes feel guilty, sometimes feel jealous, sometimes angry that I was not able to or challenged by direct, on-scene, ground zero response experience based on the September 11th, 2001 events. My role over the ensuing weeks was at a distance. It was detached, if you will, protected. insulated, safe. For all of us in this situation, our tie to the events of that day are created by associations with people who were in New York or in Washington, by the media coverage, by stories told by someone, or some of the excellent documentaries that are available on television today and have been running all week. So how is it that we remember, never forget? How do we behave today lest we forget? It seems everywhere you turn in the past week, September 11th, 2001 is the focus. We are seeing or have been shown horrific video from that day 10 years ago, and the images are etched in our mind. Colonel mentioned in her remarks, in the interest of the young people in the audience, we'll leave out some of the details. And yet some of the young people, my son at that time, seeing people jump out of buildings or fall out of buildings and those horrific images. I was reminded this week by a citizen of my community that in and I'll get the year wrong, but in 1944, as the concentration camps were liberated, there was a question of whether some of that footage was to be shown on television. And General Eisenhower insisted that it be shown in its graphic horror because he saw that as the only way that people would remember and be committed to the fact that these things did in fact exist and did in fact happen. Perhaps that's applicable today in the news coverage that we're seeing. I think it bears a burden on adults to make sure that children understand those type of things. But in fact, we do sometimes have to see bad things in order to remember. Today, across this country and across the world, heads are bowed and silence is kept as we recall the events of 10 years ago, when those seeking to express their beliefs, ones inconsistent with ours, did so by imposing themselves on innocent others and killing nearly 3,000 people in the process. How do we honor the sacrifice of 343 firefighters, the death of about 75 police officers, the death of other citizens of the United States, and in fact our world? They weren't all citizens of the United States. New York is a cosmopolitan community of the nth degree. I have just a few thoughts. The 1970s rock group Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I guess I could also invoke my generation, and those of you here that smile understand that, posed a poignant question in a short piece written by Stephen Stills and first heard in perhaps 1970. In the song, they intoned, and I won't sing it for you, do we find the cost of freedom buried in the ground? The song was an anthem of the Vietnam War protest movement. If you believe often, when, or if we contemplate the value of our freedom, it's when encountering the death of those most closely associated with preserving it for us, all the brave soldiers that cannot get older, as the song would describe them. Today, I think we should not forget in any way, and we should honor and respect those who are actually, literally in the line of fire for our freedoms in the American soldier. As well, those firefighters and police officers who died at the World Trade Center, like the soldier, would say that they were just doing their job, answering the call, making the run, that their actions and sacrifice on that fateful morning saved hundreds and perhaps thousands of others who might also have perished in the two events. Wasn't much we could do at Shanksville. Considered in today's context, I find the Crosby, Stills, and Nash incantation one of challenge to freedom-loving people everywhere, to make sure that those dying for our freedom are not the only ones paying freedom's cost, are not forgotten, that their death was not in vain. When I think that, those words are familiar, are they not? Could President Abraham Lincoln have delivered the words of his Gettysburg Address a few days after September 11th, 2001, standing in the smoke-filled Ground Zero crater at the Pentagon in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Paraphrasing Lincoln's words with all due respect to that oration and the president himself, we're engaged in a war testing whether this nation or any freedom-loving nation can endure. We have come to dedicate a portion of this field as a final resting place for those who died. The brave persons who died here have consecrated it. We must never forget what their death represents, and they shall not have died in vain. That we will have a new birth of freedom by our resolve and devotion to carry that freedom forward. John Donne was an English cleric and writer. He hears the far-off knell of the church bell, and himself lying sick upon his bed, contemplating his own mortality, says, "What's happening with this bell ringing?" He probably said it more eloquently than that. And he wrote his thoughts in his Meditation 17 that included these words: "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me because I am a part of mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." Donne's classic analogies to mankind's interconnectedness speaks to all of us today. The bell tolls for all of us to share in the cost of freedom with those who die and have died in its protection, to take on part of this cost of freedom. Freedom isn't free. As part of mankind and still alive, we can respond by making sure that the cost of freedom is not only borne by those buried in the ground, and that those who paid this ultimate sacrifice will not have died in vain. The cost of freedom needs to be borne by all of us. Hear the bell toll for thee. Listen for it today. It's incumbent upon each of us, the living, to pause, to remember those fallen on this anniversary of their death, and to commit ourselves to preserving, promoting, honoring, celebrating the freedoms that we enjoy, and to be vigilant and participatory in protecting them for all people of the United States and of the world. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts today.
Thank you, Chief Ashbrook, for sharing your perspective with us this morning and for being a strong and loyal community servant. We cannot thank you enough for what you do every day to protect our community. Our last remembrance this morning comes from Congresswoman Jean Schmidt. As you might imagine, she spends a great deal of time in Washington, D.C., and offers her perspective from those in the nation's capital. Congresswoman?
I don't think any of us will ever forget where we were that fateful day 10 years ago. I know where I was. I was in the car. I was getting on 71 to go to Columbus to perform my duties as a state representative when my sister called. She said, "How far does Emily, my only child, work from the World Trade Center?" And I said, "Well, a couple of miles." "How far is her apartment?" I said, "A couple of miles." "Why? What's going on?" And she said, "Well, I don't know, but a plane hit the World Trade Center." So I turned on the radio and I couldn't get any information from local stations at that point, but in channel surfing got Howard Stern, who was polite that day because he was actually reporting about what was going on that fateful morning. And as a parent, I was paralyzed with fear about what was going to happen next and how would I get a hold of my daughter. I didn't hear from her for 2 days because communications were rather difficult in New York. But on the drive up there, listening to the radio, having my sister call and fill me in on graphic reports, I recognized what makes our nation great. Because out of those ashes, so many heroes arose. The first being our safety service personnel, those firefighters, paramedics, and police officers who every day put on the uniform and they go about their business, and because it's such a minimal risk in their lives, we forget that when they put that uniform on, they are risking their lives for us. And on that fateful morning, they went into that towering inferno, knowing they probably wouldn't come out, but hoping that others would. And they did. It was those heroes on Flight 93 who at that point realized what was going on and realized that their plane was headed for our nation's capital and thought to themselves, no, this plane isn't going to attack any more than the folks that are on this plane, and they were going to go down on their terms, not the terrorist terms. And so they landed that plane on a new battlefield in Pennsylvania. And then it was those from the ashes that said, you know, I love my country so much, I'm going to volunteer, and I'm going to fight this enemy so that this flag can be preserved forever. And those men and women that have gone before us, continue to go before us, who put their lives on the line, they are our true heroes. Their families that sit back home, waiting patiently for them to return, heroes as well. And for those that have lost their loved ones, those like the young men that went to Sycamore High School here in this greater community, their families who now recognize they'll never hold that loved one again, but know that that loved one sacrificed their life because they loved our country so much. Those are the heroes that have arisen out of the ashes of New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. And it's incumbent upon all of us to not forget that and to be heroes as well, and understand that we are a nation under God, and that means we need to act like God's children and love each other as God loves us. And so every day it is incumbent upon us as we get up in the morning to make a resolution that we are going to love one another as God loves us. And every night when we go to bed, we should reflect if we accomplish that mission, because that's what makes America great, the fact that we are a nation under God. And so today, as we remember that horrible incident that changed our nation and changed all of us 10 years ago, let us celebrate the heroes that came out of those ashes. Thank them for their courage and their patriotism. Let us love one another, and let us never forget that under God we are free. God bless you. God bless those that keep us safe, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Congresswoman Schmidt. I would also like to acknowledge the wife of U.S. Senator Rob Portman. Jane Portman is here with us today. Jane, will you please rise and be recognized? She was in Washington, D.C. 10 years ago today and spent the time immediately following the attacks trying to get home to Ohio to be with her family. We're glad that you're here with us today, safe and sound in your home state. At this time, I would like to show our appreciation to individuals who routinely often without thought to their own safety, provide care, safety, and comfort to those who are in need. If you are a first responder, please stand now. Thank you. If you are active duty or retired military personnel, please stand now. Thank you. If you are employed in the healthcare or funeral service industries, please stand now. Please join me in thanking all of these individuals for their important service. For those of you who have ever been vulnerable or afraid and needed their services, I know that you, like me, appreciated their face and their warmth and their empathy and their expertise more than ever. Please welcome these 3 young ladies from Deer Park High School as they ask for continued blessings on our nation. Ladies.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the nights with the lights from above, from the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Alyssa, Kimberly, and Jamie, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. I would like to thank those UC Blue Ash employees, my colleagues, who worked very hard to bring all of us here today. They are, and please rise, Pete Bender, Janice Evans, Julie Gill, Linda Jacobs, Debbie Miller, Diane Rogers, and Michael Zipfel. Please rise and be recognized for your hard work. I will tell you that I am smart enough to know that when my talented and passionate colleagues come to me and say they have a great idea, to just get out of the way and do whatever I can to support them. So I'm grateful for your great ideas and your great work. As you commence your routine Sunday morning activities, please continue to remember the families and the loved ones of those who died 10 years ago today. Please also remember that we are a nation united, a republic that is indivisible, and a country that stands united in remembrance. Please go and hug your loved ones a little closer and greet your neighbor a little warmer, and remember how fortunate we all are. Safe travels on your journey home today. I thank you for being here. Thanks.